This is Jacob, and we are both from the Royal Academy in Copenhagen. And we are going to talk to you about our project Islands, which is an ongoing collaboration in artistic research. In spite of its well-defined boundaries, the island is a very fuzzy entity, states landscape architect Stefania Stanicia in an essay called The Island Effect. Is it a reality or a metaphor? The island is a geographical reality and at the same time perhaps the central metaphor within Western discourse. And this metaphor or reality is the topic of this collaboration. It's sprung out of a very real frustration with a tendency in our time to build islands as response to a lot of questions. For example, in Copenhagen, where we live, if you need to solve anything, you just build an island from scratch instead of fixing the stuff we already have done in times before us and in our own time. Islands are able to embody a variety of dichotomies without resolving them, and that part is interesting to us. Paradise and prison, utopia, dystopia, insularity, connectedness, hard edge and permeable boundaries, vulnerability and resilience, irrelevant backwaters, and cutting-edge laboratories. In discussing our work as a dialogue, one particular dichotomy has had potential. Are islands finite objects surrounded by the infinite ocean, or are they fuzzy, fluid, connected conditions? Oh, here we go, sorry. This early drawing of yours, Jacob, seems to vibrate a little bit. The island as a clearly bound object, or is it a loosely bound aggregate as a field condition as described by Stan Allen, ready to explode and come apart? And as we started working together, indeed, things came apart, spread out, became fields, and connected back together. Stan Allen also in discussing this, his own famous essay on field condition says, or later on, many years later, says that architecture is hard, stubborn and mineral, persistent in time and slow to change. I would say, Stan Allen would say that architecture is less like life itself and more like the ground or the platform upon which the dynamism of life unfolds. This is a detail of Piranesi drawing that has been of inspirational. Sorry, I speak really poor English this morning. Sorry, maybe I have to slow down a little bit. There was a big Piranesi show in Copenhagen last year, and we both found this drawing, came back with it on separate visits, and realizing that this geological condition as well became, or was already an inspiration to us. This is a casting form ready to receive fluid plaster, but it's also a three-dimensional drawing negotiating between the geological and the ecological, perhaps, form and fluidity, the self-grown and the established. For the past 2 decades, architects and designers have used the biological metaphor and ecology as a master model to explain relationship between the city and landscape. But as we just heard, Stan Allen proposes a shift towards the geological. And this drawing of ours, as many others, shows this ongoing conversation on paper about this conflict between something that's stable, between permanence and process, or the fluid and the contained. This is Alex McLean's aerial photograph from his collaboration with James Corner, taking measures across the American landscape, kind of trying to extend this idea of the fluid and the solid to a much larger scale in our work. So we are drawing in plaster as well, negotiating the fluid quite directly in time. At some point this will stiffen, and there you have the stiff island, or maybe the underground is geological, the stuff that is beneath this fluidity is geological. There are some looks into these. These are more models. We'll get onto the drawings in a moment. I think I'll speed up a little bit to let Jacob go to the drawings that we actually did specifically for this conference. but just to show you how things, here this is an example of how things develop from Jacob's old drawings that have been collapsed together in this section and then become a head drawing and then become a three-dimensional drawing. Then
Thank you. Bonjour. I will tell you a little more about our artistic collaboration in the development of the island project. This is an example of drawing on top of each other's drawings. Our collaboration started with a sympathy for each other's way of thinking and working, and with a desire to challenge our working methods to take us to new places. A drawing is precise and reflective, it creates, it's analytical, it is complex, it is wise and complete in its own right. The drawings are created with no other purpose than to stimulate our curiosity and wonder. It has also become a regular part of the work process to make our own tools like this template, which can also function as a kind of architectural model. With the template, we have turned a large circular model in plaster and cut it in half after an exhibition. We are never afraid to destroy in order to build up again. We do analog models as well as digital ones, like this CNC milled relief. This relief is milled out of a piece of old poplar wood as a kind of plan, where you can see a large snake-like figure and towers placed systematically on the surface. In another scale, you see the snake figure as large plaster models, here exhibited in a water tower near Copenhagen. The snake is like some floating islands, a kind of housing with piers where you can moor your boat. A drawing made for the snake template. The white line indicates the thickness of the plaster model. It is hollow, not least to reduce the weight of the model. The sculptural section indicates floors in a megastructure, but also deals with scale. The model can be an ornament or stucco as well as a megastructure. The template can be pulled through the wet plaster as a straight element, or rotated via rotation axis as a circular element. Sketch of the elements, course with piers and case, a parallel straight element and turned elements. This is also the snake elements and an ivory tower we did on a display at the Academy's library. So we can both stack the models as well as arrange them in lengths. Where's the time there? I still have okay. The image shows the snake, on display in the exhibition place, the water tower in Brønshøj, and how it occupies the exhibition space and makes changes of direction following the tower's giant pillars and other obstacles due to its operational structure. In a totally different scale, how to draw a circle in the sand with the same tool, the same template as the plaster models. And this circle only exists for a few days or hours before being consumed by the sea. And now to the Montreal drawings. This is a drawing before Corona, and this is one after, where Anna and I met on what do you call it, Zoom, and how we began to sort of create a new language, you could say, and also take our own medicine in terms of how we teach our students. So this sort of became a method of making these Montreal drawings. We made 6 drawings, and we gave them a name and a function in this island project. And the first one we called for fortifications. This is an old picture of Christian Gide's 3D map of Copenhagen from 1761, showing some of the fortifications of Copenhagen. And we're both very inspired by these figures. And this, you could say, sort of the landscape and building becomes one and merged together in some sort of fortification, like in this lacquer relief from an earlier project. And this is one of the drawings. It begins with a fascination of starting with something that is only a few lines, and then developing it into something that suddenly can have its own name. Here it ends as a kind of fortification of a course, you could say, or a huge wall in the landscape. To begin with, we don't try to solve a problem. We don't have any hypothesis, or we don't know where we will end up, but something meaningful starts to emerge, hopefully. Yeah, we experience the flow together with the drawing, you could say. We surrender to it, and we work our way into the drawing. And now, onto cultivation fields. Some of our reliefs in plywood form a kind of representation of its own material, of the material, its own construction, you could say. And the lines that arise when digging into the layers of the board. And the relief becomes a way of drawing. And in this drawing, it becomes elevations and valleys in the landscape. Yeah, the act of drawing always surprises us. Every time we put a line on the paper, something important has happened. As the Danish architect Jørgen Utzon once said, happiness is something you experience for a few seconds. Maybe it was the moments with the drawing he meant. It is in the drawing that we can reach the farthest horizon and discover new land. This is where the very special feeling of